Welcome. I'm Alan. Who else is in the room with me?
I'm Jack Turner.
Hello, I'm Joe Pike.
I'm Alexis Coleman.
Hi, I'm George Gamble.
I'm Evelyn Nicol.
Hi, I'm Charles Pearce.
Hello, I am Samuel.
Brilliant. Welcome all of us. So what we're going to do here, basically we had a workshop with Young Somerset this morning about emotional well-being, and we're basically just going to talk about our experience on that, what happened, all that kind of stuff, because we didn't want to record it because it's a safe space, but there's a whole load of things coming out of that we are able to help other people with coming out of that. So I'm just going to start off with, I'm just going to guide everyone through to kind of just remember what we actually talked about in there and what actually felt like talking about some of the stuff. So we started off, and it's all my favorite way to start off, icebreakers. What was the point of that icebreaker?
It was sort of to introduce ourselves and show a bit of our personality. So what we had to do was say our name and then say an animal. Like if we were an animal, what it would be and why.
Yeah. Who felt really comfortable doing that?
I did. It was really comfortable. It felt like a safe space, as the title said. It was going to be a safe space. It's not going to be uncomfortable. We got to know each other, and it felt like a virtual group session more than knowing what the topic's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's willing to share what animal they said they were?
Right, I had a little dilemma with this because I panicked. Were we allowed to choose fictional animals, or was it all actual animals? So that sort of changed my opinion on what I was going to say.
That didn't even occur to me in the session. That's brilliant.
Because I was originally going to say that I would want to be a dragon because I like to hoard and collect things. But then I changed it to a red panda because I didn't know if we was allowed to do fictional animals because, it matches my bubbly personality.
True. Anyone else willing to share what they selected for that?
I went for a bald eagle because apparently in the session, even though I had not planned out at all what I was going to say, I just said, so I can fly out and see everyone. Don't know where that came from.
But that's interesting because my first thought of that really does represent you because you like to kind of stand back and survey the stuff. I thought that was a very, very self-aware choice. It was like, yeah, I see that one.
When I heard that was what you had to do, I got very confused.
Yeah, because you weren't there for that.
How can you pick an animal when there's no list of what things that you need to be considering and taking into account when you pick which animal you are? Is it just your favorite animal? Is it an animal that resembles your character? Is it an animal that resembles other attributes? What about an animal?
This is really good. Who else overthought it?
Me, but I was first, so I just went in my brain and realised I have a pet border collie. So I said border collie because I could hear them. And I was like, that's an animal.
I would have overthought it if I didn't know that I was a Leo from all the zodiac tests that I've done to myself. So I would have really overthought and I would have said, dog.
I mean, I thought thinking of an animal that tried to resemble me, and then thinking about what happened throughout the session kind of just changed my opinion completely.
Now, bear in mind that icebreaker I thought was it's quite a nice one because it got you thinking and it got the group kind of talking. I felt it got to the end and I felt I had to say it as well because I had to kind of I don't want to break this because everyone else has come through, and I thought actually everyone seemed to do it really smoothly. I thought, did anyone else notice the difference in the room before that icebreaker and after that icebreaker?
I felt like there was more trust. We all trusted each other a lot more based off the answers we were given. Which, by the way, my answer I just thought completely on the feet. Oh god, bald eagles. What do bald eagles do? They fly. Okay. I just sort of went like that. Really.
It's funny how you all have that opinion because I don't think icebreakers work on me.
Moving on, so we started talking about anxiety, which is the main focus of today's session. So we opened up with this question of what is it? So what did we get to the kind of conclusion of what anxiety actually is?
That it's just it's just a variety of different things. It's not just one thing, it's a lot of things. like the more we spoke about it, the more I didn't think about, like, it went from like it could be work related, it could be like socially, like personally, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like something you can kind of control, but you can't control, if that makes sense.
I think the lack of control is a really big
Yeah.
part of what we were talking about today, I think, wasn't it? It was that thing that affects you and you can't really get through it.
Yeah.
I think that explanation is only kind of works to a degree though, because you've got to describe what it feels like as well, not just
we
what
then talked about
caused by
symptoms,
it.
which you also missed, which was more about how it feels.
So segueing nicely into how it feels, what different things were we talking about for the feeling of it? Because I mean, this is the bit I'm with Joe on this. When he said that, I instantly started to think of symptoms and stuff like that. So what? Because he had a whole variety of different symptoms.
Because the thing is, I myself only know how I class anxiety. Other people might class it differently, have different feelings for it.
So what do you class it as, Joe? What would you talk about it as?
Burning pit of hell in your stomach. Your heart rate would get faster. You would probably feel hot or cold, dependent on what kind of scenario you were in. You would possibly activate your emergency response, which in my case is normally freeze. Other people is flight or fight, stuff like that. And you would do this all without anyone noticing. And it would be entirely in your head. And your head would then start shouting things at you. And it's very helpful. It's not really helpful.
Now, my question is, how does that differ from what we talked about in the session?
Did it differ?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that, Joe.
So what I wrote, that kind of sounds like a bit of like the thing he was saying about feeling sick and like fight and flight and not being able to speak or speaking too much, and like how your body could feel different. Other things that like we talked about was like crying, getting angry or withdrawn, confusion, stuff like that, or like stuff like stammering and stuttering. What you were describing to me, Joe, sounds more like how I would describe having a panic attack from my experience with panic attack than an anxiety, because anxiety is kind of like panicking, but usually less of it.
I was going to say it can also differ. You can do like having an anxiety attack and a panic attack. It can differ, like, I guess, where your line is on where your class is a panic attack.
They're very similar.
Yeah, it's like where your body, it's like Joe said, it's like where you get hot or cold. Like your heart rate races faster. You get, and then everything in your brain just kind of, it's like flashing lights in your face. You don't know what to do. Like you can either run away, fight or flight, and you don't even notice. You do it without even people noticing, or you might think you do anyway.
Because you can do it without the expression on your face changing, and without what you look like changing. It's very much an interior thing that people can't see until you start crying, and then people can see it. But you probably shouldn't let it get that far, and that's the thing.
I always describe anxiety as a big giant electrical ball inside your stomach that just, it's almost like, what's it called? When you rub the bed too much and you touch the dog, you get a static shock.
Yeah.
You get like so many, like millions of static shocks in your stomach. It just becomes painful and you don't know why. That's how I describe anxiety.
To know if everyone that has anxiety overthinks.
Definitely.
Yeah, that seems to be a fairly common thing that was brought up in the meeting, that like when people are going for anxiety, they like overthink things and stuff.
Because I tend to overthink most things, and I have quite an overactive imagination. So when it comes to imagining what could happen in certain scenarios, that kind of backfires.
Because we did definitely talk about what ifing. I think I can't remember if Alex mentioned it or if you mentioned it, Jack. It's kind of that big what if, because I think you went into quite a really good explanation of how you saw it, and you got to the what if, and I just went, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, what ifs? Like you think of so many outcomes where realistically, all these outcomes that we think of, 99% won't happen. Do you know what I mean? And you just can't help but think about it, because I always like to see it as a positive thing. You're what ifing because you care so much. That's why. That's how I always look through it. You care so much, therefore I stop overthinking about it because I care. That's how I think about it.
See it as a negative thing and shout at my brain to shut up when it decides to do that.
I think it can be a lot about like how like caring too much is seen like in your society or like your upbringing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
can affect it a lot.
It's a really good point.
Because like there's some things that like I don't mind caring too much about, and other things that I do mind caring too much about, and I can almost directly link that to like how I was like raised and what was seen as a good thing, what was seen as a bad thing.
There's kind of two types of anxiety. There's the one where you overthink a lot and that leads to the anxiety. And then there's just plain my brain is screaming at me, and that just kind of there isn't, you don't overthink to do that, it just kind of happens.
What if your anxiety is causing you to overthink?
Well, then you just
And that
get
would be a
stuck in
very
cycle.
vicious cycle.
Vicious cycle, grr.
Yeah.
You would be, your anxiety would be causing you to overthink, which would be causing your anxiety to spike, which would cause you to overthink,
I
which
know,
would
like,
cause your
when-
anxiety to spike.
So what we're saying, overanalyzing the overanalysis that leads to anxiety is probably a bad idea. That's what you're saying.
He also mentioned about the symptoms. Now, what was interesting was when I was watching the presentation, like I could identify like the symptoms on the screen, so much so that I like just when he'd finished the symptoms thought, oh god, I think I might be anxious now. So I just literally had to leave.
Yeah,
I've got no idea why that happened.
So I wanted to bring, at this point, I wanted to bring up this point of people talking about mental health and being triggered while talking about mental health. This is a fascinating thing. I've seen this before. I've seen it in big groups where talking to and people, because it's, you know, it's something they've got an issue with, but because they've never dealt with it, it almost brings it up to the surface. And because they're not talking about, thinking about it, this is how I see it anyway, it just overwhelms them.
I know that when I'm talking about like anxiety and mental health, sometimes I almost stop paying attention to how I'm feeling and kind of end up, because I get so anxious about talking about it, I just kind of end up not thinking about me in that situation, but it more in a here's a generic person sense instead of how it's actually affecting me, because it's very different to apply the things to yourself as it is to apply them to this hypothetical person.
I'd be interested to know if you were to look up information about some sort of mental health problem and then find out that you were experiencing some of the well-known symptoms of that, would you then start worrying that you had that mental health problem? And would that then make you worry a lot?
Yeah,
because that has happened before 100%.
I get
a
that a
couple
lot.
of times at least.
Yeah, I get that a lot. So like not even with like mental health, but just like health in general. Like I remember a few years back when I was back in before college, we had someone come in to talk about like brain tumors to raise awareness of it, and like they showed some of the symptoms of it. And like before they did it, I knew that they're going to talk about the symptoms, and I asked if I could sit out. But for like a year or so after that, I'd be constantly checking to see if I had like double vision or something, and my brain would just constantly be ticking over that, and I couldn't think about anything else for like a year or so after.
That's, yeah. I mean, anyone else get something similar to that? Because it sounds like, I think that's something a lot of people.
Yeah,
There's actually a word for it,
definitely.
but I can't remember the word for it.
Well, that goes back to the whole what if scenario, seeing the symptoms, like what if I have one of these symptoms? What if I come to the conclusion that I have what they're talking about?
Yeah. I don't think
there's
that's...
also a kind of I know I have these symptoms. What if it's this and this and this and this, because I've looked up the symptom and I know what it can cause.
I get almost like the opposite of this though. I get the what if I'm making up the symptoms? What if I've like invented this? Because what if I'm secretly manipulative and haven't figured it out yet?
So that's
And,
like a
like, all
reverse
that, like-
paranoia. It's
Yeah, it's like the exact opposite of what you're describing. It's like, what if, like, I'm taking support away from someone who needs it more and stuff like that.
oh, see, now you're opening this whole thing about, but I'm because what if I'm not worthy? What if I don't deserve any attention? I don't deserve any help.
Guilt and self-doubt, I believe that's called, Alan.
But this is also the same thing. What does that person? What if that person really doesn't like me? It's like he opened up with that thing about kind of, who else does this thing about kind of, or what if that person doesn't like me? Yeah, everyone does that. But we're all in that because it's almost kind of, if our self-doubt is there, or or guilt is there, and it's kind of, oh, that person hates me because what if I said something stupid? What if this? What if that? This is all the same thing. The symptoms, the seeing someone else, the kind of the anxiety, it's all exactly the same thing happening, surely.
It's quite it's like you said, Joe thinks it about the vicious cycle. And it's like you overthink, you get anxiety, and then it's like you overanalyze, or it's like, what if no one like, it's the what if adds to the vicious cycle. So it's like, what if someone doesn't like me? Then your brain overthinks and you get anxiety, and then it will just go, everything happens all at once.
So everyone else recognize any of this?
Yeah.
So what can we do about it? How can we cope with it? What strategies can we use?
Please, no one say, just don't worry about it.
I hate it. I hate it. Hate it when
Yeah, I hate when people say, don't worry about it, because what do you think I'm trying to do? Do you think I'm just trying to worry about it?
Or the classic,
Seriously.
it's fine, it'll pass.
That's also
Really?
that's quite funny.
Points the obvious and goes, you're overthinking this. Yes, I know. I know I'm overthinking it. I don't know how to stop overthinking it. For Christ's sake, give me some useful information.
When someone tells me I'm overthinking it, that actually helps me. It makes me think, yeah, I'm stupid. I move
Jack,
on.
you're overthinking it.
And that didn't care to me. All the thinking I did, I never once thought about that. So yeah, that would overwhelm me then, didn't it?
And your
Everyone
brain
was
can just
overthinking
kind of like if your brain comes up with like this really weird scenario that you've definitely overthought, and you know you've overthought it, and you go tell someone about it, and then you just see the look on their face, and they just kind of mentally roll their eyes because you can tell it by the expression on their face, and you're just like, you are not helping me.
I know. I remember.
Who else am I meant to talk to here?
It's like when someone says I'm fine, or it's gonna be fine. It's like you just make the situation worse, and it's like, the typical I'm fine type of response.
I'm one of those people. I say I'm fine. Every time I start talking to someone, I have the kind of, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. How are you? I'm great. That kind of thing. And that is just embedded into my brain, and there are no other emotions that come with how are you apart from I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, the people who say I'm great are probably 100% lying. I'm great.
I'm one of those irritating people though, who's like, how are you? Blah blah blah, generic answer, and then we'll ask you again exactly after you've given me your answer, because okay, yeah, but I actually want to know. I'm not just asking you after small talk. I hate small talk.
I have actually learned to go from I'm fine, because a lot of people pick up on it, to I'm all right, because it's the most typical answer and no one will question it.
There's something I noticed about replying to that thing. So you have the pessimists, you have the optimists, and you have somewhere in the middle. The optimists would go, I'm okay, I'm good, thanks. How are you? The pessimist would go, I'm not too bad, thanks. How are you? And the middle people would go, I'm fine, thanks.
I also
So
do that.
you're either good, you're not too bad, or you're fine. I'm one of the people that says I'm not too bad. And for me, I'm like, oh, geez, I'm being real pessimistic now because I'm saying the word bad in a sentence.
I've just gone for the classic, I am well. Everything else might be rough, but I am well. Thank you.
How am I? I'll just say, nah.
When I was a little kid and people used to ask me how I was, I used to always say, why wouldn't I be? Because I was not actually answering your question. But there's a generic enough answer that you're not going to ask me another question. And you're not actually going to answer my question. Do you think I'm just being normal?
With that sort of situation, like sometimes I'd like to tell people how I'm actually feeling, but like I sort of like go like into anxiety mode, and it's like, but what if they're having a good day and I ruin their day by telling them how I actually feel and stuff? So I normally just default to like I'm fine and stuff, because like I don't want to ruin their day. I don't want to bother them with how I'm feeling.
Going along the same note, if they come home from work or whatever and they're having a bad day, again, you don't want to put more of a burden on their already bad day by telling them how crap your day's been.
Again, we're back to this self-worth thing. I'm not worthy of you helping me. It's kind of, this is interesting.
If I tell someone I'm worried about stuff and they say, "What are you worried about?" my go-to answer is everything. Because at some point, I have worried about pretty much everything there is to worry about. Albeit I won't be able to give them examples of that, because in my mind, it's just this whole lot of worry and I have no idea where it's coming from. But there are a lot of things that add up. And so there's like little thing after little thing after little thing that you start worrying about. And once all that is gathered together, it's just like this massive, terrifying worry that you have in your brain.
I'm on the same page as Joe here. Like just lots of small things build up until it just like boils over, and then it's just like.
And then someone goes, "What are you worrying about?"
Yeah.
And you can't tell them what you're worrying about because you've got to the point where you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
I'm probably the same as Charles and Joe.
So there are at least 4 things at this precise moment I'm worried about.
Like, do you ever, like, for people that over worry about the littlest things, do you ever read a message by someone and you read in between the lines and it fits into your brain? I can tell you've done it, Alan.
I've done that before.
I do the opposite.
Just like, what do they mean by when they acted this way after saying this?
I do the opposite of that.
I do that to you, Alan.
I get in their brains and worry how they're going to interpret the message that I'm about to send them. That's what I worry about.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing with texting. You're not allowed to attach emotion to it. Apart from emojis, and let's be honest, who likes them? They suck.
I've learned that the hard way, is where if I put an emotion into something I'm saying, like if I say, like if I'm messaging someone who is like message a friend, it's like I'm fully aware they would care if I said something, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna the typical answer of like tell them of how my day went and not put any emotion because I don't want them to worry.
And it's not up to your friends to sort your problems out for you. It's up to you. So you've got to take that burden all by yourself.
See, I worry about the exact opposite thing. I'm always worried that someone's gonna like lie to me when I ask them how they are. I'm gonna worry about like someone's not gonna come to me if they need my help and all that. So I'm like the opposite of all of it on the end, where I'm there like, what if someone's lying to me and they actually really need help and I haven't messaged them soon enough, and that I'm like 2 minutes late when I message them.
That's just paranoid. So yeah.
Do you ever,
but they are all linked to each other.
We all say that, sometimes adding in the emojis when we message people helps, but if we just get the emojis, nothing else, that's just as worse.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
Just because you send someone a smiley face, it doesn't mean that you have a smile on your face as you're sending that message.
Back to this coping mechanism. What was the thing that that he talked about in the session? What was the kind of the coping mechanisms he talked about in there? He had 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1. Was that the only one we talked about in there?
I don't think I've got there yet.
This other one.
Pushing your feet.
Pushing for and breathing.
Breathing. What was the
Someone
breathing
explain
exercise?
in greater detail, because I do breathe every day.
So basically,
breathing slowly in and out.
If I didn't do that, it would be called hyperventilating.
I mean, yeah, I never understand the just breathe thing. It's like,
I do that to live. Come on, I need oxygen.
just slow your breathing down. I know I'm meant to be doing that.
Just slow your breathing down.
That's
If I
hard
do
right
that,
now.
I'll have an asthma attack. Do you really want that to happen?
So what technique did he use to help you slow? Was it about just being aware of it? Was there a counting thing with it? What did he do?
I think it was being aware of your breathing and pushing your feet into the ground. Doing like a Superman thing with
I didn't really understand the whole pushing your feet into the ground thing.
No, I'm lazy to do that.
Is it one of those meditation things that's meant to ground you with the earth and your
what
spirit
he's-
and all the rest of it?
Now, bear in mind, with a lot of that stuff, there may be the spiritual stuff about it, about how you're kind of pushing your feet into Gaia and all that. But actually, there is a physiological reason for doing this. It does actually help because it's putting kind of it's getting your brain to think physically. So you're almost distracting your brain at that point by getting it to focus on a change in physicality. So I think what he was talking about is feet flat on the ground and pushing down. So you almost kind of you're basically changing your body posture, and then it just helps you focus on the physicality of what your feet are doing and breathing. Am I right? Because I missed that bit. I'm just going by other stuff I've tried in the past.
What you're describing does sound like something that I do, but unintentionally, where it's like when you're depressed, when you're not depressed, but when you're like down, it's like you tend to slouch in the chair, but then it's like something arises, like something positive. It's like you end up sitting straight. It's like I now realize I do that unintentionally.
Now, interesting with that because it's kind of you start thinking something positive happens and you sit up straight. So the idea is if you sit up straight, you bring the positivity in as well. Whether it works or not, I don't know, but I know that kind of physical distraction is quite useful because it can stop if when your brain is descending into kind of panic attack, it can really help for that. Jack, you had a Satori moment.
But he also mentioned that to look around your room and observe.
It was 5, 4,
Oh
3,
yeah,
2, 1.
laptops there and everything.
Yeah.
Sort of doesn't work because the thing, like, it does work, but that's a hit and miss type of thing.
Now, I'm going to say I quite like that one because the 5, 4, 3, 2 because there's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel.
Touch. I think
Touch,
touch, yeah.
Yeah, touch
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
So it's and sometimes that can be a memory of something you touch, or you can actually physically touch something if it helps you. Then
What things you can hear would be blood, white noise, electricity.
No, no, like wind or birds. Like
So actually being aware of what's so it's
God.
linked to mindfulness, which I'm in two minds about mindfulness, I must admit. But it's being aware of what's around you at that time. And the physicality. So for instance, like I pick that up, feel the weight, that can quite help me. But this 5, 4, 3, 2, has anyone found that kind of that grounding exercise useful? Has anyone done use that before, or has anyone find that useful in the session?
I used it after the session. After I went and just sat. I stood about the back door and just see if it actually did anything. Maybe if I'm actually anxious, it will try and. But the hard thing about that, when you're anxious in that very moment, you're trying to put all your. I don't know. You're trying to think of a lot of things, but that's the last thing you would want to think about. Add to it.
I think the trick is to get into the habit of doing it. So build up something. So because like I said, I keep forgetting how to do it. But if you get yourself into the habit, just sitting there right and just burn and run through that list with you. What you can then find is quite useful. You make it so it's a bit of a habit, and then you can actually use it. So when you're feeling anxious, like I say, it distracts the brain. That's the idea behind it. So I mean, of a lot of these things he talked about in there, I think it's building up a habit to do it. It's like breathing exercises. I tend to use them a lot because I was like doing yoga when I was 13, 14. So it's something that's kind of almost second nature. But if you don't build that, it can be quite hard. It's interesting because when he pointed out that if I'm stressed, I'll go off to, bang the drums and play the instruments because he's seen what's in my room. He's absolutely right. That's exactly what I do. Literally that is my de-stressing. I'm able to zone out and almost completely distract and just focus on that thing because that's something I practice an awful lot, is getting into the flow within the performance. That's something I've been doing since since I was 12, 13 as well. It's like being able to have that thing that you can focus on at the exclusion of all else, I find is really good because it means when I come back to the other problems, I can sift through them a bit more easily. But that's my coping strategy.
I find with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, had to think about counting down then. Is it can work sometimes, but in some situations it just doesn't work, especially if you're overloaded. It doesn't work because if you're in a busy environment, you don't necessarily want to be thinking about how many things you can see, hear, touch, and smell. You want to be doing the opposite and being away from the things you can hear, see, touch, and smell because there's already too much of them.
I find doing yoga helps with my anxiety.
Good. Interesting. Yeah, because seriously, I mean, it's something that's almost designed specifically to help with that.
Yeah,
It's a really good thing.
There
Anything-
are 2 ways that I deal with things. That this isn't cope, by the way. This is deal.
Deal,
This is
okay.
a different verb there. So there's 2 ways. You can either vent it or you bottle it up.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of both methods. The bottling up one is preferred.
Okay, my opinion
You
on
get
this, the
visual
bottling up is not
cues
good.
when I'm doing both. When I bottle it up, I'll do a little something I recently learned about in our audience project called stimming. I will do that when I bottle anxiety up, right? You will see me flapping and probably messing about and stuff like that.
That's expressing it in a way.
I get very chatty and deflect when I feel anxious. The way I vent it is normally to do some form of singing, which Evelyn has had to sadly witness in college when I've been stressed out about something. I will do really creepy, like quiet singing to myself. Just
I mean,
because,
as long
I
as it
like
works.
music. What can I say?
As long
I
as it
used to go to
works,
choir
so-
and stuff. I like music.
Alexis, what are you saying?
I mean, there are different ways of dealing with it. Maybe not the healthiest way of dealing with it, but yeah, bottling up does seem like the common one.
But bottling up is possibly the worst thing you can do. Seriously. I'm going to wind this up now. I'm saying, because obviously one of the things we've got to do is over next week is reflect on some of this anxiety. You've already you've already done quite a lot of this, but it's be aware of some point where you're feeling this anxiety. And like, obviously Joe is kind of, be aware whether you're venting or you're suppressing at that point. And this is kind of where this reflection comes in. So you think about what's actually happening, what is triggering this anxiety, what's causing you anxious. And I think this is a good one.
Everything.
Yeah, okay. As Evie's pointing out, there can be a point where you're being overwhelmed by all this, the stuff coming at you, which is going to be different from other things, from say overthinking. And actually, but think about how you're actually feeling at that point. And actually, really kind of try to take stock of what you're actually going through at that point, what you're actually considering. And then, try and remember afterwards what you did at that point. And this could be what you did that could have made it worse, could have made it better. We don't really care. We're not judging on that. But then this kind of, and obviously within the reflection, what turns it really into reflection is when you think about, well, what could I have done? And the big thing about this is next time you're in that situation, hopefully you remember what you could have done, and that starts to become the model of what you do. So, for instance, and as far as I'm concerned, Joe singing out loud, if that helps him, then he bloody does it, and he makes everyone around him aware that that's what he's going to do, and everyone knows what he's doing, and he builds up a relationship with people.
No, they just hear me creepily doing it in the corner.
And I've heard you creepily doing that in the corner, and I had wondered about it.
Have you actually?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
In the TV studio, definitely. And I did think at the
it's
time,
much louder when I'm at home, which will definitely be a problem when I go to uni and have shared accommodation.
But the interesting thing is I recognise that as stimming activity. So that's a really fascinating thing. Does anyone, so we kind of got literally 1 minute, we're going to wind this up. Does anyone get anything they kind of really want to kind of close this session off with?
Happiness.
Happiness. Let's all think happy.
Yeah, the fact that it's very hard to be happy. Because, you try and be happy, and on your happiest of days, your brain then throws some past anxieties at you, and then you're like, oh crap. Okay. Well, I'm sad now. Oh well.
Let's leave this with deep depression. How about that? How about that?
Okay, well, the last thing I'm going to say on this before I stop recording, one of the things I'm going to say is brilliant, because one of the things we said in the session was we need to be here to inspire each other, because we're sharing, these are things we're all going through. These are things that we have these shared issues that we all address, and we can support each other through them, and we can support other people through them, because that's the way we end up getting support ourselves, because we are all worth that support. So I want to say that again, every single one of us. I'm talking to myself.
You sure about that, Alan?
I'm positive. Don't you bring me down. Right. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for listening. And thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much.